Let's talk about gathering your audience. In order to work with an audience, it first needs to be gathered. And if we go to the left side menu and click Gathering Audience, you see that we have a bunch of modules to help us do this. And we're going to start with Check Links. This is the module that helps you check the validity of the usernames in your list. If you have a bunch of usernames in a list, you can check whether they are valid and also get a bunch of other additional information about them. You can go off of a list on the right, or you can use an existing database by clicking Use Base Data. This is especially useful when dealing with a very large database, just to make sure that all the usernames on that list are valid and you can work with them in the future. So we're just going to put a list of usernames on the right here. And now let's take a look at the general settings, starting with force the number of users in a group. So when we run this task, the module is going to automatically sort all the different kinds of data out. Chats, channels, usernames, these will all be in separate categories. Force the number of users in a group is really only useful for determining the exact number of usernames, but since we already have the number because we put the list in, this isn't necessary. Then we have check private groups, which is for if you want to check for if certain groups have been set to private. And then we have standardized links. Actually here, I'm going to bring back the other text I had in the text box. And you see here how there's 3 different types of formats here. We have the link format, the username, the URLs. If you click on standardized links, it's going to convert all of these into one standard format for your convenience. Then we have determine sex, so we add an extra category for each username to show you its assigned sex. And then you could do the same thing for the user's bio as well, have a separate column for that. And then we have number of requests per account. This determines how many users each individual account is going to check. And the recommended number is 40, but maybe your accounts can do more. Then we have delay between checks. So you tell the module how long to wait between individual checks. And then we have maximum wait time, flood wait. If during this task one of your accounts catches a flood, this is the maximum time it'll wait before just shutting the whole task down. All that's left is to select our accounts. But this module does also support thread management, which is of course great for dealing with large numbers of usernames. For example, if you have 4,000 usernames and 100 accounts, so 40 each, this allows you to stem the flow. So in this case, for example, you would only be dealing with 20, but we only have 1, so we don't need it right now. Let's click Start. And as per usual, when running the task, the module automatically makes us 2 databases. The first is the base file, which just contains the full list of our usernames. This is a very convenient way of making this list reusable for future tasks. So if you're not done with them yet, you can reuse them just by plugging in the database for future tasks. And the result file is the one that contains all the information that we are currently checking for. And while the task is running, here on the right side in Program Actions, you can see exactly which step the module is taking at any given point. And then once the task is complete, you'll see down below, it actually gives you a full report of exactly what it did, and how many, and all that good stuff. But now we have a ready database, so we can check it now. Okay, first we're looking at the base file. If we had groups, then they would be in the groups category, but we just have usernames here. So we go to users, and here's our full list. But you see that we have a bunch of other additional information that we now have on these usernames. For more about how to manipulate this information, you can watch our other video on working with databases. Now let's move on to the module Gathering Audience, which is the module that will allow you to extract a list of usernames from chats. So here we're going to plug in our chat, but if you have an existing database of chats, you can plug that in using Use Base Data. Alright, first up we have time limit. The way it works is that the module will sort users based on how recently they've been online, and then time limit is going to set the cutoff point for which users it will gather. Here we have 1 day, meaning that the module will only gather users that have been online in the past day and no one else. Then we have leave groups when done. So when you're done parsing, you can have each account leave the group that it's gathering the audience from. Keep in mind that for this task, you will need one account per link that you are gathering from. So if you have, for example, 50 links, you're going to need to use 50 accounts to extract all the users. Then you see we have a bunch of other options that are identical to the ones in the previous module. Maximum wait time flood weight, standardized links, determine sex. This is all the same. But if you want, you can also create a txt file with your usernames separate from the database. But then everything's the same. We select our accounts, and then if we're dealing with much larger groups, we can use thread management to stem the flow. All right, all the settings are ready. Let's click start. So this module is a bit unique in that it produces a few additional databases as well. We have our standard base file, the result file with the total results, our separate txt file that we asked for, but you see we also have a separate database for our chat that we're extracting from. When you're dealing with multiple chats, you're going to get each individual chat have its own database separate from the total result. Also, it's important to note that the module can only gather participants that are currently visible. Telegram has the option of making certain users invisible, usually through the admin. So if you are trying to gather from a group where everyone's invisible, you're going to need to find a different way of identifying them, either by them having written something or some other factor. In any case, the easiest thing to do is just to check the group beforehand to make sure that all the participants are in fact open and available and that you can work with them. You see that the parsing is taking a little while. The speed of parsing is mostly determined by two things. First, it's the number of users, and the second is the speed of your proxies. Those are the two main ones. By the way, you don't have to wait for the task to be finished before you look at the databases it's already produced. So we can actually go into these databases and watch what it's already gathered in real time as it's gathering it. Although in this case, the usernames might not actually be visible yet because the module is still gathering them. Also to note, the txt file that we'll be creating, since it's the base file, will only contain usernames, no other additional data, just a list of usernames, that's it. Also, if certain participants don't have usernames, they won't show up on the list either. And at long last, task complete. And you see that the module also gives us a full breakdown of what it's done. You see that it gathered 2,510 unique users, 1,632 of whom have usernames. Now let's take a look at the chat's database for additional information. And look at all that information. We have names, we have surnames, we have the gender, we have whether or not they have a photo. And so then in the future, we can work with all of this info. Now let's take a look at the next module that will help us gathering users. It's called Gathering Writers to Chat. So here we're going to use the same chat and the same account. And you see here we also have a time limit, but this one checks for the most recent messages sent. So if we set it to 1 day, this module is going to check every user that has written in that group in the past day, not necessarily been online. And then you see a lot of options that are pretty much the same. Leave groups when done after parsing, standardized links, determine sex. This time we're not going to create a separate txt file. But yeah, now we're ready, so let's go. So as mentioned before, we're now checking for every user that has written in this group in the past day. More specifically, what will happen is the module will check all messages written in the past day, find the user who wrote them, and then gather those users into this list. And just like with the previous module, we'll be creating more than 2 databases. We'll have our base file, our result file, and then we'll have our individual chat files per chat. We're only having 1 chat here, but when you have more than 1, you'll have 1 per chat. This is very convenient for letting you choose exactly which groups you want to work with. The result file will have all of the collective users from all the chats gathered. But then if you want to exclude some, you can go to the individual chats and gather them there. And you see that this process is also going to take a little while. So again, as with the previous task, the 2 determining factors will be the speed of your proxies and the number of messages in the group, because we're checking for all the messages in the past day. So depending on the group, there could be more or fewer messages. Now imagine this, but you're checking for messages in the past month. It might take a while. One of the other things these modules automatically check for is duplicates, and if they find them, they delete them. So when the task is finished, you'll have a full list of unique usernames. That's a guarantee. All right, task complete, and as you can see, we gathered 3,858 unique users, and we can have a look at all of their data in the database. And so here's all the additional info. Although you'll notice that some of the fields are incomplete, this might vary depending on the visibility of the users. All right, let's move on to the next module, Gathering with Account. Let's say that you have a chat from which you'd like to gather users, but you don't have a link to that chat. Well, if one of your accounts is in that chat, you can use this module to get around that. I've chosen my account, and now I have to choose the group that I'm trying to extract from. To do that, we have to press Get Data so that it can find the group. And you see now it's done, so we can select a group from the ones that it's found. And then you set up all the settings, which here are identical to the module Gathering Audience, including the time limit. So here it checks for online recency. But yeah, here you can set a maximum wait time for flood wait, determine the sex, leave groups when done, and create a txt file if you wish. So then we click Start, and the module connects to that chat through your account, and then the parsing is pretty much identical to what we saw before. For this task, you might notice that the databases are named a little different. This first one actually has the groups that we're working with here. So if we open it up, we can see all the basic data on the group that we're extracting from. We only have the one here, so yeah. And then the next database is the one that has all the users that we're gathering. And just like with the Gathering Audience module, the speed of this process will be determined by your proxies and the size of the groups themselves. Obviously, larger groups, even with the same time frame, are going to take longer to parse because there'll be more users to extract. Alright, task complete, and we see here that we've gathered 1,983 unique users. And once again, here is our database with all those users, as well as all the extra information about them. First name, last name, gender, photo, etc. And the last module we'll look at today is gathering from comments. This module gathers users based on comments they've left on channels. So we're going to put our channel over here. And the rest of the settings are pretty much the same as with the other modules we've already looked at. You can use an existing database by plugging it in by using use base data. Then we go to the time limit, which in this case checks for recency of comments left on posts in channels. So for example, if we were to put 7 days, then it would check for all the comments left on posts that were posted in the past 7 days in that channel. But the rest of the settings are pretty much the same. So we got our account, and let's go. And just like with the other modules, you will get a base file, a result file, and then one database per channel that you're gathering from. And task complete. This one was a lot quicker because there weren't that many posts to go through. So you see we only got 5 unique users. And here's all their extra data in the database. So you see, no matter what your circumstance, there is always a module available to you to get your audience the way you need it to.